Okay, and a very good evening to all of you and to our Zoom
To our Zoom partners.
partners.
Don't want you to trip.
Okay.
I'm kind of worried about it, but that's
I'm gonna
okay.
go around this
Go around
line,
it.
yeah. I'm not gonna bother with that. Okay, good evening to all of you. This evening we have a speaker from the Alzheimer's Services of the Capital Area. This is Ann Rowland.
That's never a good beginning song.
No, I'm not owning it. I'm not gonna own it.
Salene said, talk to me.
Alzheimer's Services of the Capital Area. Ann Rowland. She serves as the volunteer and event coordinator. She is committed to advancing the mission of teaching, caring, and connecting for those affected and their families. And she brings 30 years of professional communication and management experience from across the state. With close family members impacted by Alzheimer's and dementia, and those issues that are related to Alzheimer's and dementia, she understands the caregiving role personally. She's passionate about sharing this mission. She holds a Bachelor of Science from LSU with a concentration in international economics, and she is a lawyer, very lawyer, Tiger fan. Go Tigers.
I was a loyal Tiger fan.
So let us welcome Ann Rowland.
Not a lawyer. Thank you so much, Miss Salene, and I
You're
appreciate being invited. And I thank y'all all for coming out on a Thursday evening. Very busy time with summertime starting. So I really appreciate it. I have a lot of familiar faces in the room, and that makes me feel really good. I think Miss Pat wants me to make this full screen. So let's see if we can do that. Not sure it's going to do that in the capacity it's in. So we'll just start, Miss Pat. It's not, I don't know that it's gonna do that. Can you make it? Maybe. Look, clicker clicking. Should be. That's about as big as it's gonna get on today, I think, because it's not really in PowerPoint, it's just working. Okay, you think it'll go forward like this? Nope. I think it'll go forward like this. What do you think? Doesn't want to go forward. Maybe it'll go down. Yeah, that'll keep us happy. That's me. Y'all see me up there? There we go. That's how we're gonna go tonight, which is just fine. That was my intro. So I thank you very much for having me and for being with me tonight. I am thrilled to be here. I like to start with, do you know anyone who has been affected by Alzheimer's or any type of dementia? If you do, raise your hand. Almost everybody. If you have not personally been affected, you know someone, you have a friend, you had, like me, my grandmother likely would have been diagnosed with Alzheimer's had she not died 30 years ago, right? We just called her not really herself today. She had been raised and raised her family in the country. And as she aged, my mother and her brothers and sisters brought her to Baton Rouge, where they all lived. And she was very confused from the day she stepped into her home here in Baton Rouge. She was about 88 by then, and she had lived a very long life in a very different place than Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Although she had been in and out, and she had raised my mother for some time here, at that point in her life, she was severely affected with Alzheimer's. We knew she couldn't live alone for any extended period of time, right? But we did not use that term Alzheimer's. And I think it's a testament to, right? Yeah, she just was, could not be very nice sometimes. Okay. We called it getting old, senile. She just wasn't herself. Okay. when her caregiver showed up one morning, opened the door, my grandmother took a broom and beat her out the door and down the street. She called my mother. Oh, she won't let me in the house. Okay. So she called me my mother's name for about the last 6-7 years of her life, right? It was not unusual. We didn't think it was weird. We didn't think she had a disease. We just thought she was old. Okay. But looking back on what I've experienced in my life many years later, that certainly today, if we had brought her to an internist at the age of probably about 82, 85, they would have said she had what's called mild cognitive impairment that then grew into on Alzheimer's. Okay. That was my first experience. I was a young girl, but we put her in a nursing home. We took care of her. We never thought it was anything unusual. Okay. Today they would put her on medicine. She could even have about a 50% chance of kind of improving, right? The disease doesn't really get better. We'll talk a lot about that, but it can be stalled with the technologies we know today. And in some today, it's actually even being reversed at certain stages, okay, with medication and a long list of things and a whole lot of money. Okay.
Yeah.
So that is the reality of where we live today, as opposed to me as a young girl. And I feel pretty comfortable saying I'm not the oldest in the room, but I'm not the youngest either. Okay. So this is probably 50 years ago when my grandmother suffered through this. As years went on, I actually had a father who had small strokes. He had a syndrome called Sjogren's syndrome. Y'all probably never even heard of that, but it's an autoimmune, and it affected him in tiny little strokes. And he died over a process of 13 years. And as he went through that process, I went to Alzheimer's services for the first time, And that was my first experience as a caregiver where I thought, oh, somebody can help me with this.
What does it mean?
It's a TIA is what they really call them, but he had little blood vessels, this syndrome, this autoimmune disease, which runs in his family and is genetic. My grandmother, my mother, not my mother's mother, but my dad's mother, certainly had it. Again, not diagnosed because she lived a long time ago, right? And so he did this 13-year decline. Little stroke, lost a little bit of vision, little stroke, lost a little bit of balance, little stroke, lost a little bit of, now who are you? Just sort of like Alzheimer's over time. And I had, as many of us in here may, I had a large, 4 siblings, 4 spouses, a mother, a business, young children. I was kind of pulling my hair out from either end and wasn't liking my mom or my siblings very much. And I happened to go to a friend with her grief counseling, and someone from Alzheimer's Services had done a presentation. Wasn't Barbara, but she was there at the time. That's how long she's been there. Okay. And so that was my first experience saying, wait a minute, I don't have to do this by myself. And they gave me really good advice. And they gave us really good advice. And advice we could have confidence in and move forward with. Now, as I said, it's what's needed. And I didn't know that at the time. I thought you just muddled through, as we have with my grandmother, right? So we hope today that you will learn a little bit about what we can do to help your friends, your family, someone you know experiencing this difficult disease. Because my dad looked like himself. He died 350, 6'4", laying down in a bed, but he did not wither away. Okay. He just had one stroke too many and didn't wake up. Kind of a blessing, quite frankly. He was well prepared us, and we had been very prepared. We went to Alzheimer's and got the information we needed to help ourselves to cope with what we knew would be a long-term illness where my mother was going to need a lot of help. My mama was a little short Italian lady. My daddy was a big old football player. I don't get my height from her. Okay. And truly, My mother, I know at times had fear about caregiving for my dad because she was a little old lady and she loved to yell. Okay. That was just, how she did it. And we all had to change very dramatically how we spoke to each other, how we dealt with him, and what we did. And they led the way for me. Okay. And so hopefully we can do that for someone who may be experiencing this. All right. Look at this. Six leading cause of death in the world. Okay. More than, it's not heart disease, but we'll talk a little bit about that as well. 1 in 3 adults die from Alzheimer's disease. If you make it over 75, you can count in a room. 1 in 3 will experience Alzheimer's and have those results that eventually are fatal. Okay. 5th leading cause of adults over 65, which I think most of us in here might probably qualify. Maybe not all, but almost all. It is a national crisis. That's why we've heard so much about it. There's so much help that needs to be done out there. The problem with where we are today and where we need to be 5-10 years from now is that the care for Alzheimer's individuals is basically put on the family's back at this point. They are beginning to get some programs, but truly a caregiver bears the burden, pays the money, and spends the time. And that is awful for families. They give up their life to care for that person. My mother did that, quite frankly. My husband's aunt, her husband was diagnosed first. She did that. That had been her role her whole life. But then she got Alzheimer's. Of course, they lived to be 92 and 94. Your chances, it's great. I had another aunt who just passed at 96, and she was sharp as the day is long. Again, eventually something, 96 a long time to live well, right? That's great. I'll take it to 80 like she did at 96, okay? But my aunt and uncle struggled, and we are spending Medicare, governments across the world, and we are spending just millions and millions and billions of dollars. And that projection is only going up. It's not going down, okay? Because we have better diagnosis. We in this room all know what this is called now. When I was a little girl, we didn't call it Alzheimer's. We all have a name for it. We know there are doctors who specialize in it, etc. So Louisiana statistics, of course, are not any better than anywhere else across the country. We have a crisis here, okay? And we need to learn a little bit more about what is Alzheimer's. What's the difference, between dementia and Alzheimer's? Anybody know? It's really the same. Dementia is a big, big umbrella. Big, big umbrella. It's just brain failure in a big name. It was diagnosed by a physician in 1906, who was a German physician. That's where Alzheimer's comes from. It's been around for more than 100 years. Think about that. And in my lifetime as a young girl in Southern Louisiana, I did not know that term. Probably in college before I really, probably out of college. Okay. So basically it's the person's brain is dying, but the reality is we have lots of reasons why our brains begin to deteriorate over time. And we have all kinds. Y'all may have heard of younger onset Alzheimer's, where people in their 50s, sometimes late 40s are diagnosed. That is a disease that could go on for 15, 20 years. Many of them don't. Younger onset seems to really accelerate the brain deterioration. So normal Alzheimer's that you hear about is what's called late life, anything over 65, right? Then there's vascular dementia, like my daddy had, like his heart didn't work as well as it needed to. So anything you do good for your heart, you're doing good for your brain. We'll talk about that. Lewy bodies, has anybody heard of that?
Yes.
That's a very tough disease, right? It is another brain disorder disease. Come on in. Another brain disorder disease that affects different parts of the brain than Alzheimer's more aggressively, is a good way to put it. And they have a lot of difficult delusions of someone harming them. So it can be very difficult if you're the only other person in the room and they see somebody in the corner with a knife. If you saw someone in the corner of this room with a knife, you'd freak out, right? So they go through that multiple times a day. They have pretty good medicine for Lewy bodies today that can help some of that, but it's very mind altering, right? It's very difficult. It's a very difficult disease. And we see that more and more. We have more advanced brain scans now that can diagnose more particularly to the brain. And so we see a lot more of that. Frontal temporal lobe dementia, believe it or not, that's what my husband actually got diagnosed with eventually. At a ripe age of 54, he had open heart surgery. So when I tell you I've been a caregiver all my life, I'm still at it, okay? So he had open heart surgery, had a little brain damage, and then survived. The chances were not good, and we're very blessed that he's well, up, active. He actually drives a car not further than 2 miles from the radius of my home, supposedly. But we do, frontal temporal affects your ability, language can be a little difficult, and your ability to have social norms. Okay, frontal temporal can really, you can go into your mood shifts are bigger. So you have to, it's wonderful that they can diagnose it so specifically nowadays, but it is a form of dementia that can also be a little aggressive as it advances in later stages. Then there's all kind of other ones. I do like to talk about depression or other types of mental illness can in later years be more difficult to diagnose dementia. If you've been a bipolar adult your whole life, as a dementia patient, it might be more difficult for your family to understand that you've been on different medications, right? So I like to talk about that. It doesn't mean that they can, it just means that, you know, you have to be really aware if you have a loved one who you think isn't really making all the connections, and observe them a little bit more carefully and get with the right doctors on that. Also with Alzheimer's and any other dementia, in the beginning stages, we know we're not ourselves. So what do you think that does to our mental state? I would be depressed. I know I went through that with my husband. There's no doubt we had severe depression over, what do you mean I can't work? He didn't understand why he couldn't go to work. He couldn't remember, but he couldn't go to work. But for him, he was remembering fine. So it's a very difficult balance, right? All types of dementia. Anybody have a question?
Yes. How do you diagnose the difference between those by a CT scan or?
Anybody in here a physician? You are? Do you know anything about CT scans and how we're really, I'm going to tell you that they do a lot of that now where they used to not, but they do a lot more now. What do you know? Not to know.
Well, they'll do CT first, MRI after that.
Yeah.
And, you know, all these tests of cognitive type tests.
Right. So,
And a lot of times you wind up ruling out everything else and whatever, like Sherlock Holmes, after you've ruled out the impossible, the improbable is left.
Alzheimer's is a diagnosis of exclusion. Exactly what he just said. Yes, ma'am.
I'm surprised Parkinson's is under there. Is that Parkinson's or not?
Parkinson's in
Well,
late
very-
stages, late stage Parkinson's
Really?
can cause dementia. My sister-in-law just lost her mother 2 weeks ago, and she had late stage Parkinson's for about the last 2 years.
Hallucinations and delusions.
And hallucinations and delusions. She had a very tough time with that and was very difficult. She has 2 daughters here in Baton Rouge. And and I work here. So I'm going, it's not your mom. Yes, it is. You should have seen her. She went at me like she'd never seen me before. I said, she didn't know who you were. She did know, yes, she did. She called me Shannon. I said, not when she went after you. It's very hard that that's your mother, the person who has nurtured you. I was a caregiver for my husband's aunt and uncle who had 2 grown children here in Baton Rouge and 6 grandchildren. And their daughter had, she couldn't really, she didn't know which day her mama would know her. And so she just kind of chose, Aunt, I can't go. I said, you do what you need to do, baby, it's all right. But I understand. My mother knew me till the day she died. I was very blessed. But they're in there, and that's what we're here to tell you. If you do certain things to help them, they can, I say this all the time. My aunt and uncle died at, she was 90 when he died at 92, and she lived 4 more years as an advanced Alzheimer's patient, okay? They did not know each other's name. Did not know that was who they'd been married to for 73 years. But when she walked in the room, he immediately calmed down. And when she sat next to him, he grabbed for her hand and she took his hand. And I say, love can conquer all. They both were different people sitting next to each other, holding each other's hands. They knew great comfort in that. They knew great comfort in prayers together. And they could repeat and recite prayers. We're talking about 90 and 92 years old and didn't know who I was and had known me for 40 plus years. But put them in a chair together, put them in 2 chairs next to each other or in 2 beds. Love conquers all, even if you don't know it's doing it. Right? Even if you don't know it's doing it. Diagnosis is a lot more extensive now. My husband goes once a year for a 3-day, what they call neuropsychological profiles to see how he's advancing or decreasing. We used to do it more often. There's no reason. I mean, it is what it is. So this is the brain, plaques and tangles. Anyone heard of this? I'm sure this you have. Plaques and tangles is what develops in your brain, sort of like plaque in your arteries, right? But the tangles in your brain are what talks to you. And when they don't connect anymore or can't find each other, the plaque, amyloid plaque, and the tangles are too tangly and they don't talk normally. But hey, don't we all get some good days and some bad days? You get up and really be able to hear somebody, and other days you get up and I'm like, I don't hear a word you just told me. It's not till 9:30 before I can process anything. Okay? We're like that as a dementia patient as well. So you can see the healthy brain on my side and the severe Alzheimer's brain. Basically, that brain is shrinking because it's not making those connections anymore. And so it just withers. Alois Alzheimer's is the physician that diagnosed all of this. So what's normal aging? Here, let's pass these out. If y'all just pass them on, I'll start with one. This is just for you to take home. So y'all pass them over there. So what's normal aging? Okay, we all know Alzheimer's is about memory loss. What does that look like? Like, what are you missing? I had this one lady who was early onset and she could still drive, but she would walk out and she could not remember where her car was. So you know what she did? She bought one of those child safety cones, kept it in the back seat and in the trunk, and when she went somewhere, when she went to Walmart and went on top of the car, she came out, that's my car. She could remember the cone. She couldn't remember the make and model of her car.
Well, that's what license plates are on the front, putting your hat in the back. Yeah. That's how I would know my car.
There you go. There you go. Find your, what works, right? I thought that was ingenious.
Yeah.
Like, that's the best suggestion. I've used it. Other people have used it. Like, I should keep a cone in my own car. I haven't been diagnosed yet, but come on, we all lose a car in a parking lot. Okay? So it's normal.
Right, we got a white SUV.
Right, exactly, exactly, or a white truck. I had a friend who lived in Indiana and she called when she would visit. She would come and she'd say, I just have to tell you, I think Louisiana is where white pickup trucks come to die. They're everywhere. And then that became a joke with my kids, and we would count white pickup trucks in a day. You'd be shocked how many white pickup trucks my kids counted in a day. That was the joke. The white pickup trucks came to die here.
I bought a red car.
There we go. You can find yours,
I
huh?
can find my car.
I have another friend who's very active with us, and she has a red VW, little car. What do you call that?
Yeah.
Bug.
Yeah.
I say, you'll never lose it, Carol. It's gonna be there everywhere, right? So basically normal aging, kinda, as you get older, not everything works. Like our hearing, we lose a little bit of our hearing. Normally, we lose a little bit of our sight. We lose a little bit of balance. We have to work really hard at those things. And we also lose a little bit of memory. Okay. So if you live long enough, I don't know about you, I'm now in my mid-60s. There are times where I go, I wish my mama was still alive, because she would know that person's name. And I just can't find that name in my head. Right?
When you stop thinking about it, sometimes it shows up.
There we go.
Yeah.
I tell the story that when I was in my 20s, I didn't have a list. I just went about doing everything I needed to do. By the time I was 40, I had 3 kids, a business, 2 parents. I had to make a list, right? Here's my list, read my list in the morning, out the door I went. Today, if I don't have that list, I don't remember I have a list, okay? So once you hit 60, it's like find the list and attach it to you, okay? So we do normally progress. None of that's, a difficult thing or something I should be really worried about. I do encourage people to do what we do. We give free memory screenings. Make an appointment. You can bring whoever you want. We'll screen them. We'll give you a little score. You can go to your physician and say, I'd like you to put this in my record. I know that at the age of 64, I scored 98 out of 100. So in the next couple of years, if I score a 95, I might need to be a little concerned about the decline, okay? We do free memory screenings throughout the parish in the month of November. Libraries, all throughout Greater Baton Rouge. We'd love to come to Broadmoor Baptist and do one, anybody in here, but really and truly, it's a great way to kind of get a gauge about where you are now, where you might see some decline in the future. Any questions about what normal aging might look like? I told my friend who called me and said, my daddy's really having some trouble. He doesn't like me. She was 1 out of 11, the youngest and the only girl. Her daddy adored her. Okay. She had 10 older brothers. I was the oldest girl. I got no privileges. She got every privilege. I was her best friend. I mean, anything, anywhere she wanted to go, her daddy said, you take them. You take, he had 6 grown men to choose from. And she called me 3 or 4 years back and she said, my daddy just doesn't like me. I said, I don't think your daddy's right. And she goes, really? I don't know. I said, well, what's he doing? She said, well, he ruined the toaster last week. He put tomato slices in it and it melted. I said, yeah, I don't think your daddy's all okay. I think we might need to have him tested. But it was her daddy. She really didn't make the connection until she started talking to me. It's very hard to recognize these difficulties in people we love. So, yes, ma'am.
Different people kind of age it differently. I mean, some people start losing things, and it's real frustrating for people to say, if you're over 65, you got this problem. That's not necessarily true.
And you may never
It's
have.
very different.
All of our brains are different. Physicians can tell me that. So my brain is going to do different, even with the same things happening to it, than yours will. Your brain is going to look different in dementia. I tease my brother, my older brother passed at 60 years old, and I would tease him all the time. If you ever get old enough where you have to go to a nursing home, they're not going to play your awful hard rock music. And he said, yes, they will. Okay. For him, it was essential in life. I always thought that was a blessing. He never really had to get old and didn't have to fight that, problem. But we do experience different warning signs of dementia. It's not all the same. My aunt had for years, the one who got Alzheimer's eventually, she had imbalance problems. And they had a swimming pool. And then they had to move out of that house with a swimming pool because they couldn't maintain it. He had Alzheimer's. She was his full-time caregiver. And they were in their late 80s. Okay. So I always thought, well, she's just not as strong as she was. So I would go, we would walk every day. Come on, Nanny, we got to walk. You got to get healthy. I'm healthy. There's nothing wrong with me. And she was about 2 inches taller than I was. She was no little lady. And I said, no, you know, you're slim, but we got to get healthy. She had imbalance, and that can be a sign of dementia. And it was 4 or 5 years before the physician looked at me and he says, Ann, you've been complaining to me about her not being able to stand up. She could get up, she walked fine, but the balance of her getting up, she couldn't do that like she always had. And I noticed the difference, and I thought it was her legs. It wasn't her legs, it was her brain trying to balance when she stood up. And that's a sign of dementia. And I didn't know it until that doctor connected it, which was very helpful for me. I quit bugging her about walking 15, 20 minutes a day. And she didn't remember the difference anyway. So it was kind of stupid on my part. It made me feel better. And that's what we do. We make ourselves feel better, right? So changes in mood and behavior. I think that's a really big one because that's very unique. Okay, you have to know me to know if my mood changes. You're not gonna, you won't see that unless you know me, right? So it's very hard if you live alone. It's very hard to hear that you're different than what you perceive yourself as. But those changes in mood and behavior can be very significant. My aunt quit wanting to go to church. That was a really big sign for me. That's when I began to kind of really connect. I don't think she's right, but she was diligent, faithful. She couldn't go every day, but every day she could. And when I started saying, Nanny, I'll pick you up, we'll go to 8 a.m. mass. And she said, no, I don't want to do that. She didn't want to do that anymore. It was very confusing for her. And I didn't connect those dots very well, even, knowing what I knew. Withdrawal from work or social activities, that's a really big sign. Because if you walk into my husband went to church every Sunday. After he got well, I'm like, let's go to church. Well, he really didn't want to. Wasn't that he didn't want to go to mass? He knew that he wasn't going to recognize everybody in the room. Advanced enough to know we had problems, we couldn't really figure out how to go beyond it, right? So we changed churches where he wasn't as familiar. Didn't matter to me. He wasn't as familiar, and his expectation of knowing people in that church was not what it was in the church where we had raised our children. So we were able to make some small arrangements, differences. But withdrawal from work and social activities really is a sign that you're processing something. It's not right for you anymore, but you just don't know why. Okay. And a lot of exploration can really help that. Any other questions about signs? Misplacing things is another thing I like to say. We all misplace keys, but when you put keys in a refrigerator, we got a problem. When you put a tomato in a toaster, that's, it's not working right. Something's not right. Elevator's not all there. Okay, heart disease and Alzheimer's. This is an amazing, and this is 2000 to 2021. Those numbers have even increased in 2023, but heart disease in that time period, because we know about heart, has decreased. But we don't know that much about Alzheimer's. And those diagnoses, 140%. That is distinct differences. So you really, as we learn more, as doctors learn more, we know more to prevent, right? Like I should have 50 pounds off of me and I would be a much healthier person. It's not a question in my mind. We know my heart would probably work better, right? It's a little bit harder to get there, but that's the reality, okay? We don't really know about Alzheimer's. So that's why we're out here trying to get as much information. And I tell people all the time, read. You can't read enough, right? Okay, what's not normal? Not normal is putting the keys in the refrigerator. Not normal is not wanting to garden and you've gardened all your life. Not normal is don't want to go to church anymore, just will stay home. What is normal for you that you regularly do? My aunt had Parkinson's and she was quite old. And then at one point she would have us all for lunches and things. And I went to get the dishes out to set the table for the tea for her. She was probably 85, 86. And the dishes had been put up dirty. That's when I looked at her sister and I said, I don't know how to tell you this, but there's something wrong with Aunt Ness. She's not right. And she said, I don't know. I said, yeah, you do. And she's not right. She would never have put up dirty dishes that stuck to each other in a cabinet. Never. But she did. So what can we do? That's not normal. Any questions about what might not be normal? Okay. So what can we do? Heart and brain health go together. We prioritize our brain health. Is very important. Really and truly, if you haven't talked to your physician, I'm telling you, talk to them. It needs to be part of your workup annually, just like your heart issue is. They're not very many of them are going to want to do it. My physician, and I won't tell you where I go, he looked at me and he said, you were too young. I'm not worried with that. I said, no, I'm not young. I'm not that young. I want it in my record. If I ever leave you, I want it to follow me. He laughed, you're not leaving me. He's younger than me, so I'm probably not. Better brain health goes beyond preventing Alzheimer's. Really and truly, it's crucial for our ability at any age to think, act, and live well, right? So what you do for your heart is really good for your brain. Not all of it, but some of it. Risk factors that affect your heart can be very good for your brain as well. So what can we do? We like to stay smart and stay brain healthy. Here's the 4 things. Exercise. It always starts with exercise. Exercise. Anyway, diet, a Mediterranean diet. I don't know if you've read about that, but read up on it. It's worth reading about. We'll talk about it a little bit more. Here's one that I love to talk about, sleep. And it's actually a lifetime of sleep. So if you have been a person, my executive director does not sleep well, and she admits it, okay? And she works very hard to get about 7 hours of sleep a night. And most nights she does. I have been a lifelong sleeper. I'm a family of 4 children. My parents, my whole household woke up by 5 a.m. And I have been a nighttime person all of my life. And to this day, I mean, 10 hours of sleep and I'm one happy person. I don't get that very often, right? But I get at least 8. Because if I don't, I'm not pretty, and I admit it. And mental activity, what do we mean by that? All kind of stuff now. Now, I like to say when we talk about mental activity, we'll talk a little bit about that. Exercise, right? Y'all got to watch me on time. Exercise, anything you do for your heart is good. Diet, this is what I want to talk about. Balanced, healthy diet, fruits, vegetables. What are healthy oils? Yeah. Avocado oil. Really and truly, there are parts of the world who eat a much more oil-based diet than we do. Greece, Italy, parts of Africa, and theirs is basically not beef oriented, but fish oriented. They do much better. Of course, processed foods we now know are really not healthy, and they're really not good for your brain. The Mediterranean diet, and there's one out now that's what they call the Mediterranean DASH diet, which I have pretty much adapted for my husband and his cognitive. If I can keep him on that for about a month at a time, he does better. He's more alert. He's not as, of course, he's got diabetes. And so that also helps with those balancing those blood sugars. It's not just about keeping them low, but balancing them. So it really can. They call it the Alzheimer's diet, but I like to say, go look at the Mediterranean DASH diet. It's very, very good. I can't testify that I live by it all the time, but I try. Okay, and that's the objective. Really and truly, sleep is very, very important. As we sleep, our brains clean ourselves, clean our brains. So if you have lived a life where you didn't sleep much, right? Then your brain is more prone in some people. Here's the thing. You said this earlier. Everybody's affected differently. So they know that in some people, diabetes really matters. They know in some people, sleep really makes a difference in how those brains function in older years. Okay. But I like to tell you, if you can sleep, take any excuse, and here's healthy brain is a really good excuse. So go after that one. Okay.
Drugs to make you sleep?
Um,
Doctors prescribe you like.
I don't know that, I wouldn't tell you that I know any difference in that. I don't think.
That's easy. You can't just lay your head down and go to sleep.
Some people do. It's just, and my husband has all of his grown up and all of the life. I mean, I've been married to him almost 40 years now. And I mean, from the day I married him, he put his head on the pillow and went to sleep. And I went, how are you sleeping? How did you do that? He said, turn your head over and go to sleep. I don't think I can do that.
But isn't
I-
that's
Everybody there.
Everyone's different.
It's like, you know,
My aunt who had, you could sleep standing up. So
I can sleep.
I would get up in the morning. I would get up in the morning, but I'm a night person and I know that. So if I don't make good decisions till afternoon, even though when I went teaching and I was there at 6 o'clock in the morning,
yes.
I wasn't functioning till afternoon.
I tell people that I work with, and they're very generous with me, is that I'm very happy. I smile at you in the morning, but give me an hour. Just give me an hour. By 9 o'clock, I'm a much more, my cognition is going a lot better. 8 o'clock, I may have been up for an hour and a half, but I'm still not there yet.
You make your best decisions now on Sundays afternoon.
Yes, I don't make a lot of decisions in the morning. I do a lot of busy work in the morning to wake me up, right? So, no, it's really true. All of our brains work on different clocks. Relaxation and stress is real. Your body responds to stress negatively, and so does your brain. Okay. So, Asian cultures, European cultures who live more relaxed, don't work as much, sleep more, do Tai Chi. And Tai Chi for Alzheimer's patients has actually been proven to improve their cognition in some patients. Again, I say all of this in some patients, okay, because we are all different. And for some, I have a good friend of my uncle's who's now 84, and his good friend who is 77 was just diagnosed early onset Alzheimer's. He's been a musician his whole life. And his group and he lives alone, his children live in California. He's been in Baton Rouge for all of his life, but certainly the last 40 without his children. And I told him, I think he would be a great candidate for Tai Chi, because he is one of those high-strung musicians. I said, man, Bill, you gotta do something. And so there's some group out at City Park. I don't know if you know about this, but there's a group at City Park that goes and does, and he doesn't live far from there. I said, you need to go join the Tai Chi group. You might find a cute lady, and I think it'll do your brain a lot of good. But he's early onset and he is taking medication. He'll be okay for a little while. But again, trying to stall that disease in its early stages is key in today's diagnosis world. Okay. And certainly stress doesn't help any of it. I can tell you that as my husband experiences stress, his cognition immediately declines. Because I mean, he's only working on, he doesn't have everything that a normal person his age has in his brain. So you're working overdrive in what he does have. And when he gets stressed, and I have a small home now, and my children all come pretty much at one time. And I look at him and I said, if you just go back to the back and sit in your chair and take a little break, I think you'll come out being a lot better. Because I now have grandchildren, it's a little bit chaotic when you have extra people in the house. He doesn't know what they're doing, where the dog's going, what are they doing? I said, stress, and they don't think as well. Okay. So lifestyle changes they know can really, in some people, can really affect how well you do with this disease. You can make some basic lifestyle changes. I'm going to tell you, my husband and I were very social, went to dinner at least once a week with other couples. Well, I experienced that it's not so easy taking somebody who doesn't remember well to dinner. For my husband, he wants to sign the check, tell me, he cannot understand that things are $35. I mean, if you sit down in a restaurant today, the prices are ridiculous, right? And he looked at me and he said, we have to leave. I said, well, we're not going. It's okay. But we really had to change some of our lifestyle. How we go about doing things can change and really make it easier, not just on them, but on you as a caregiver, and really change how you go after. And breaking out of your routine, even in an older age, can really help that brain to exercise. Do something different. Do something different. Any other questions about that? Okay, music is key to mental activity. If you don't like music, start. Music makes those parts of your brain really work, and music in Alzheimer's patients can perform miracles. Okay, people who do not speak can talk. They will sing a song before they will talk. They are nonverbal, and you play a song that they love or that they knew, they will sing the song. It is amazing. So I tell everyone it's called reminiscence therapy. They use it in music, and this is the other thing. So I have up there, we really say, it's most people can park themselves in front of a television and be pretty happy. A caregiver doesn't really have to bother with you. Please understand that that's probably not the best activity. It's okay to take a break, spend 45 minutes, an hour, but not all day long. It tends to bring on stress. Don't let people with Alzheimer's watch news. That is very tough on an Alzheimer's patient, because the news isn't really happy. Okay. And it can be very scary for somebody who really doesn't understand. So if you have friends who live in nursing homes, I walked into my sister-in-law's, they put her mother in a nursing home about 3 months ago, and I walked in and they had the news, Fox News going, just blaring. I said, hey, let's put this on a music thing. And I put it on a music, and she immediately changed. My sister-in-law to me, how'd you know to do that? I said, well, who wants to listen to the news barking at you all day? Okay. And you don't understand what's going on. You might enjoy it today because you understand what's going on. I'm not casting any judgment on that. What I'm saying is, if you're caring for a person, limit that TV time, limit people in nursing homes and if a good nursing home will put on old TV shows. My daddy loved Bonanza. Okay. I would love to watch the Brady Bunch at 90. And if I live to be 90, put on the Brady Bunch and let me relive my childhood. Okay. Again, watch what you're exposing that world to. Okay. Because they don't understand the world the way they did at one time. Reading, games, crossword puzzles, Sudoku, whatever you want. Just learn to love your brain. Okay. Okay. Some results. There is hope. And I like to say this, you can do a lot of research out there. I think this lady's name in my phone is in there. Richardson is her name. No, his name is Richardson. Bredesen is another one. And there's a woman out in California. I'll look it up. If you're interested, I'll give you the books. That are doing this research and that have been successful in lifestyle changes with some different medications and a real regimen. They have seen some major improvements in younger onset patients. Okay. Like my uncle's friend, very, very new, don't have a lot of brain shrinkage yet. And it seems to be a lot of the medicines can be more effective earlier on. So I encourage everyone, if you have any doubt in your mind, go to the doctor. It's okay to get on medicine. it can extend your life. Literally can extend your life. My uncle got on medicine years ago when it was first introduced, very early on, and he lived happily as himself for a good 10 years. I will tell you, had he not been on that medicine, he wouldn't have lived very well for 5.
What medicine?
There's all kinds, there's all kinds, but there's a regimen, and I don't want to really recommend it because I'm not a physician, but any neurologist that you see, a lot of internists, geriatric internists, will recommend them now, okay? At least to start it and see if you see a difference. There's an infusion therapy now that they've seen some improvement in some patients who start early. Okay, so if you think that you're really kind of struggling, by all means, go to a doctor. I love to do this slide, 5 ways to support a friend who has dementia. Stay friends and stay connected. It's very hard. They look like your friend, but they don't act like your friend that you once had, but go help them. Be there for them. It's makes the world of difference. May not look like it. They may not be nice to you, but I promise you, they want you there. Okay. Offers to help. Don't expect them to offer. You just help. Communicate. Choose a place that has less noise, a little music, a little quiet. They do better. And I told this to my sister-in-law about her mother. You can't walk into your mama's nursing home room and all you do is cry. And she said, what am I supposed to do? I said, I don't know. I'll walk out with you, but while you're in there, you need to smile. Your mama's in a strange place. She doesn't know where she is. She needs you to be smiling. And she did. And we did a lot better. And her mom did better. She goes, I think you were right. I said, well, do you want to lay in a bed and watch your daughter cry? She said, no, I'm not sure she knew it was me. Well, she knew some grown up woman was crying over a bed. Quit. It's okay to cry. Just kind of, it's very hard, but let's do it separately. The last 2, choose a place to go with friends that's less noisy. Again, I don't take my husband to dinner very often. Restaurants are very noisy. It makes him very anxious. Grieve away from your friends. It's okay to grieve in the hall. It's okay to complain to your sister. It's okay to be frustrated. Just try not to do it in front of them. Okay. They're frustrated enough. Trust me. Okay. Just look at how you can be a better friend to a person with dementia and think about it a little bit. Any questions on that one? That was a good question. Okay, how can we help? We're here. We have caregiver support groups. We do memory screenings. We now have a 3rd Charlie's Place, and I have to update my slide. Oh no, I do. I have it updated. So we just opened a Charlie's Place in Baker. That is the largest day respite center we have now. It opens next week. We think Wednesday it will take its first patients. We have 26 registered right now. We can take up to 45 a day. Wow. So it is an amazing facility. I think you came and you saw it. It was great. We had a great ribbon cutting, and I encourage you, if you know anyone, Zachary, Central, Baker, any of those areas who are struggling with a loved one at home, who middle stages, beginning stages, you kind of can outgrow Charlie's Place in the disease. So it's really middle to late middle.
Sort of a daycare.
It is.
Daytime.
We don't like to call it that. It's called a respite center, but yes, it is a place where you can bring your loved one from 9 to 3, and they are well cared for, well socialized, and you get a whole day break. And for a lot less than you would have to pay a caregiver to do that.
I used to bring my dogs to Charlie's Place.
Yeah, that's where our offices are, North Boulevard.
Yeah, people love.
Yes, they do. So again, pets are great. They can't take care of them, right? But they're wonderful for the heart. They're great for ours, and they're certainly good for them. And we do. Please come back.
All
your doggies are dead. I hear you. Again, we have 3 Charlie's Place. That's one of our main missions, is to give families direct relief. People in other parts of the South don't have what we have in Baton Rouge. So if you know anyone experiencing this, I encourage you, to tell them to call us and let us help. The other thing I think is so great about Charlie's Place is that you as a caregiver, you have a loved one, have a third person who's speaking into your family's difficulties with this person. If you are experiencing what they're going through, if you're having some trouble, Charlie's Place and interacting with your loved one can probably identify methods that you can do to help you with that. They did for me. So my husband, when he was first diagnosed, home, physically able, couldn't work anymore, I called Barbara and said, I got to get this man out the house. He won't go to St. George. What am I going to do with him? She said, send him to me. I'll find chores for him. He could power wash. So he went to Charlie's Place, and he was a helper at Charlie's Place. He had no clue that he was the patient. To this day, don't tell him, everybody is sworn to secrecy in this room. The man doesn't know. He'd walk in, y'all would not believe that that was my husband. He's great. Okay, he really is very good now. But then he had a lot of trouble. But he swept parking lots, power wash parking lots. He washed down fences, planted flowers, cleaned the barbecue pit. You know, he would go spend a couple of hours at Charlie's Place, quote unquote, helping. But that gave me a break and gave him purpose that I wasn't assigning him. I'm his wife. He didn't like taking orders from me. Never did, still doesn't. Okay, and I understand that. I don't like taking orders from him either, right?
The other place at.
So we have one in Gonzales, one here in North Baton Rouge, at Baker, and one on North Boulevard near, yes, and then one in Gonzales that's almost 8 years old. So very in the heart of Gonzales, and very, very, very wonderful. If you want to see joy, try to come and visit Charlie's Place. It is just so fun. I don't get there often enough. And I work on the other side of the building. That's the sad part about that. But truly, I call it cheers for people with dementia, because everybody knows your name. Who doesn't want to walk in a bar and get a beer and be with people who know your name? We don't offer beer, but we do offer coffee. Okay. So come, bring them, have a cup of coffee. They read the newspaper just like we do on a daily basis. Great purpose for them. So we do in-person and virtual visits. We have resources beyond. We have a library on North Boulevard on our main office. Any other questions? We have a helpline Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4. Anyone can call. Hopefully, we would be of direct help to that person that day. We have people walk in to say, I saw your son, and my loved one was just diagnosed. Do you have anything that can help you? We can help. Any questions about that before? Because now we're running a little late, right, Kathy?
Your telephone number.
Yes, ma'am. It's right here at the end. Right there.
On the piece of paper.
It's on, yes, it's on the piece of paper. And if anyone wants some of these, I'm happy to hand them out.
Yeah.
By all means. By all means, pass them along. By all means, that's what they're there for. Any other questions? Something you wanted to know about Alzheimer's that I didn't address?
I think it's important for us others to recognize, because I just recognized it tonight. You're not affiliated with any other outside big time service,
No, we are not
Yeah.
affiliated with any
national organization.
with any national organization. We are local. We are your only local resource. There are Alzheimer's Association is not Alzheimer's Services of the Capital Area. It is a national group. They do beautiful work. They do a lot of research, and they do a lot of lobby work. We don't do either of those. We do what we call support work.
How do you
Okay.
sometimes sort out between the early on side, the people doing really crazy things, but as people get older, some of it's just aging, some of it's like, if I'm 85 years old, I may not like what's going on out there with all the kids. I like those old TV shows. It doesn't necessarily mean that I've lost my brain.
That's right.
And every little thing, sometimes everybody has Alzheimer's.
Right.
They've been overdiagnosed, so.
Well, I think that's when I would tell you, a physician who knows you
We know better.
would know more, okay? And a physician who's looking, and look, I took my aunt 3 times to her interns. Before I walked out one time and we walked down the hall in a building that she had been in since the day it was built. And she looked at me and she says, now, where are we? I said, oh, come back around, because he keeps telling me she looks fine. I don't know what you're saying. Amy. She looks. That's the third visit I took her. And I knew there was something wrong with her.
But you're around her a lot.
Well, I saw her every day. But still, he had been like he knew her. But she put on a very good show for him. Honey, I didn't have to go dress her that day. She knew she was going to the doctor. She was snappy. She had her purse. She was in the deal. Okay. She was fooling everybody, and she fooled him. The third time I turned around, went back to the nurse, and I said, I'm sorry. I need to see the doc. She just asked me where were we. She said, you stay right there and I'll be right with you. I mean, she knew then. And I went back out and I said, man, we're gonna wait. He's gonna see us again. She said, I probably shouldn't have asked you that, right? Please ask me. But she knew she wasn't right. And then not long after that, she started writing checks. She shouldn't have been writing them. But she was died. And she started writing checks to the grandchildren. I said, oh, we got problems. She gave money away. She didn't give $1 away. You had to earn it. Clean the counter, she give you $1. I mean, she just didn't give out money, and she started writing checks. And
Important to get the checkbook away from those people.
well, then I gave her a fake checkbook. You know, she had written checks her whole life. So what I did was I gave her a fake checkbook. I knew everybody who walked in the house, told the maids, told the sitters, this ain't gonna be a good check, but she's gonna write it for you. I don't know how much. And she thought $5 was a lot of money. She signed it $5. She was in 1955. She didn't know it was 1990, whatever, 2000. She didn't know. So I let her write the checks. And I'd say, just throw them away, because they're not going to the bank anyway. Don't worry about it. I gave her an old checkbook and I let her write away. She didn't know the difference. You know, I wanted her to feel like she was in control. I mean, she's grown up. She had run a household since the day she married at the age of 19. And I'm supposed to take the checkbook away and say, no, you can't write checks. I'm not fighting that battle. Here, Nan, look, I got you a new checkbook. I'm going to tell you, it doesn't have a lot of money, so be careful. She'd say, well, tell me how much. And she'd go get her little thing. Absolutely Alzheimer's. She did, you know, that in the check that you balance it, she'd put the amount I gave her and she would record the checks. $5, $9.
So
And
what
she
she said
subtract.
Alzheimer's is that's her habit. I mean, that's her habit of how she does that.
Well,
And she thinks she's paying the money and she's keeping track.
the Alzheimer's was, she didn't know it was 2015 and that $5 didn't buy a pack of gum.
But has she been out in the world to know that?
Yes. Yes.
I mean, you understand where I'm coming from?
I understand what you're saying, but what I'm telling you is she no longer understood that it was cold outside and I need to put a coat on. She no longer understood that it wasn't like, one day I walked in and she said, you know, I'm waiting for Bob to come get me. And he'd been walking the neighborhood, another Alzheimer's patient. It was a gated community, but he was out walking. And I said, well, where did he go, Nanny? I think he's coming to pick me up. I just put my lipstick on. He hadn't driven in years. She didn't know that. That was what they did. He came in, he picked her up, they went for a ride, they went to Piccadilly, you know, whatever. She's waiting for him to come for his date. And she was ready. She'd put her lipstick on. And I said, I'm sorry, I didn't want to interfere with the date, but could I come in and have dinner with you? Well, you'll have to check with him. I don't know if he has reservations or not. So I'd say, okay. And he'd walk in, Bob, you have reservations? I don't know. Okay, well, we're going to eat here. Well, that's good. I'm happy to eat here. Again,
I'm just, you know.
I'm telling you that she began to write checks in large amounts to grandchildren that I had never seen her write a check to a grandchild. Ever. I mean, you know, if you went to school, she wrote a check to LSU.
Devil's advocate at it because there's a point at which,
Yes, when is it not normal?
yeah, well, and what's normal. Way back in the day when we lived in little towns and all, everybody kind of took about care of Aunt Mary and she acted a little strange, but that was just aging. That's what we thought. And I think sometimes that Alzheimer's is right, But sometimes they're getting to a point where everybody over the age, I heard the other day, it's like you're over 65, you have Alzheimer's and you have dementia.
Well, I'll tell you what else I heard the other day is somebody told me when you get to be 80, they don't do certain tests on you anymore. And I said, well, that's kind of difficult because today, an 80-year-old person who's lived a very, active and is still very, very active should, I mean, they're not dying in 2 years. So, but it is, I understand, and there is a difference between normal aging, normal vision loss, normal hearing loss, normal memory loss is I may not remember your name very well. Or yeah, I think I put my keys there. Let me go look around and you know where to look. Okay? You didn't take your keys and hide them in the sofa. My aunt hid keys in the sofa.
I'm saying there is a difference.
There is. There is. There is. I also have volunteer opportunities. We love for, if any of you want to volunteer, we're always open for volunteers in one way, shape, or form. Good question. It's hard to know. I recommend see a physician. Tell your physician what you are experiencing. Now, the thing about Alzheimer's, what you are experiencing, what is really happening may be two very different things. When those things don't really jive, when you're looking, like I told my mother's best friend who's now 83, I said, you got to go get that hearing checked. I'm not sure if it's your hearing or your brain, so I need the hearing checked out. She said, okay, I'm going next week because it's not my brain. I said, you're right. I don't think it is. But her hearing has gotten worse. So she's not catching conversations. And it looks like dementia.
That's not really.
I don't think so. I think her hearing aids need to be adjusted.
Wow.
And it's hard to get old. My mother said, it's not for sissies, and she's correct. And now I have pity for that. Right? It's not for sissies. You got to be tough. But yes, it's hard to diagnose. This is the difficulty of this particular disease on families. Because my mother looks the same, acts the same. Why does that person who's living with her husband, her daughter, son, why do you say mom's not the same? Something's not right. I had an autistic child. I brought him to the doctor at 2 years old. He's my last child. I had two other older daughters, girls talk. He talked a lot. There was something off about my son. And I looked at the pediatrician and I said, I know you're going to think I'm crazy, but I'm telling you, there's something not right about how he processes language. And sure enough, a battery of tests and a lot of money later, I will say that. About 6 months later, we finally got the diagnosis. He was on the spectrum. And he wasn't ever going to process language the way my girls have. Is he well today? Well, after a few bumps in the road of being a young man in today's world, it's been a challenge. But he is mentally well now. But he still has issues. Just like other people have other type of issues. But what I'm saying is, there's a way, and with dementia, we tend to brush those issues off. We tend to not want to see those, right? And what I'm saying is go talk to a physician, go get that early diagnosis. Number one, you get to plan what happens with you. You get to plan. When you have dementia, other people have to take care of you at some point. You want to be the one to decide that. Or if you don't, trust somebody and tell them. Okay, I gotta finish. I'm getting the roundup, pulling the cane. Gotta go.
Rounding it up.
Rounding it up.
Rounding it up.
By all means, we're here to help. Please do not hesitate. Call our office, get the help. It's out there, please. Okay, thank you. Thank y'all so much for having me. It's been a pleasure. I hope I didn't wear you out too much.
Thank you, Ann. And
Thank
have
you, Miss
given us- Giving us a wealth of information. And please pick up these volunteers because
By all means.
I volunteered at the Baker one to do music. during the holidays. I'm gonna do some music up there.
Hooray!
With, yeah.
There's all kind of needs. You would be shocked at the kind of needs. Thank y'all so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you, Miss. You were wonderful. Now she bugged me and kept at me. Y'all need to all thank her. Thank goodness.
Well, I
Appreciate
bugged
your
you.
time tonight. You have not. You were wonderful. And wonderful. Thank y'all so much.
Information is
And,